Welcome! Today I'm just going to be talking very quickly about how I did shell dice. So there had been questions about these before, but these were some test dice that I had done. Essentially what I did to create this was I made two different molds, right? So one of them is just the inner shape of the die, and then the other is the actual die. And so this shape is supposed to just barely fit inside of this other shape and be suspended by the numbers, thereby giving it just a thin layer around it of whatever else you want to do. In this case, I was trying to do kind of like a turtle shell. So I took some clear insides, and you can kind of see through there the clear cube in there. And so I did just clear for the inner cube, for the inner shapes, and then I took some paint and I just painted around just some little strokes of brown and some dots of blue, and then I took that inner piece and put it in normal molds and then filled the outside layer with just kind of a shimmery alcohol ink that was a little bit green toned to get this here. And then I used UV resin to fill in the numbers and sanded it. And that's how I did these. But just want to show you real quick what you can do if you put your mind to it, I guess. My wife makes some really cool dice, so I'll use hers as examples because they're better than anything I've made so far. So just to show it again, here's two different molds for an example. I have this mold, which is just the shapes that are slightly smaller, and then the normal mold of just the dice. So once you create your inside pieces from this mold, then you can draw on them or do whatever you want, maybe even carve stuff out of them. Whatever you want to do, that's up to you. And then you can just stick it inside your normal size mold to just kind of coat an outer layer on it. So now let's show you some cool stuff that my wife did just to give you some ideas. Was she took that inner piece and then she coated it in nail polish, and then she put holographic nail powder on it like you would do to your nails and made it all nice and shiny, and then stuck that in and did it with a clear coat. So this has a clear shell over the top of what looks like a really cool polished die. Didn't quite come out how she wanted to, so she didn't do a full set. We just did the one die. But you could do something like that. It looks really cool. You could paint the numbers however you want. So another thing that she did, or that one could also do, and she painted her inside pieces. So she did this as a green inner piece, and then she painted this really cool snake that goes all around the die. The head's on the 6. And then it just has a clear coat shell over the top of that. So now you can paint your numbers over that. Here's she did that with all of them. Looks really cool, right? Trying to get it at an angle where you can kind of see in the corner there, it's just a clear shell over the top of it. The other thing she did was she found these, not really beads, I'm not entirely sure what they are. They're like shards of something. And she filled the inner piece with these shard things and held them together, maybe with a little bit of UV resin before sticking them in, and then using epoxy resin of the base shape, and then coated those in clear. So there's a clear coat over the top of that cluster shape. So then I thought, well, maybe it would be easier. I'm not that great with a paintbrush. What if I got like a paint pen and drew on it? I haven't tried it yet, but my wife thought that was a good idea, and so she got some pens and she tried. These are some of the things that she's done so far. These are just the insides. They haven't been coated in a shell yet. But just using a paint marker, just drew some designs on there. And then she can put those into a normal set to coat those. She did little corners and dots. So those are just the insides to be put in and coated as well. And something I'm going to point out, the good thing about the insides is they don't have to be perfect. See, this one has a void in it. As long as you put that in your shell with this part up, or at least somewhat towards the top, it'll just get filled in with the epoxy resin of the shell and you won't even see it. This is my set that I haven't done anything with. I was maybe going to use some silver or gold and maybe do just some random rune type shapes, but that's all you would do. So now if I were, for example, to make these after making the insides and painting them or doing whatever you want to do to your insides before putting them in here, and then you just have to mix up a little bit of clear or any kind of, I guess, transparent-ish color, because it doesn't have to be clear. Like I did on this one, I did kind of a transparenty color. I do think that if you do an opaque color for your inside and more of a transparent color for your outside, it's more apparent that there's an actual shell there. But then you'll just take some of your clear resin, pour a little bit in the bottom. It doesn't take a whole lot. Once you have your resin in there, take your shape and just stick your shape in. There's just ever a little bit of, it might start squishing out some resin, and then pour the resin in over the top of it. Some of these might be a little bit harder than others to get in there. Right? But you got the idea. And then you fill that with resin, cap it, there's your shell. The other thing that I think this will come in handy for the, at least for doing the insides, will help doing your inserts. So if you do like any of the liquid cores or even just any inclusions of any type that might be easier to put them in the inside first, and then you can kind of control it. Just for a good example, let's do a liquid core. It may not be exactly the full size orb of your die, which is fine. It's pretty close. So then when you do your inside, of course, it will sink to the bottom and it'll cure. But then the good thing about that is then when you go to put it into your normal size mold, when you put it in there, just make sure that it's facing where it sank to the bottom. Just put the bottom towards the top, and then that inner piece will sink down, and it'll essentially level out and be pretty close to the center without having to really do like a pre-cure of just a little bit of resin just to make it sit in the right spot. So that's an option. That's something that might be good for you to do. If you're trying to do that, that may be one way that may be helpful to do that. That's it for this video. I mostly just wanted to show you how I did that and how you can do your own. So I hope this has been helpful to you, maybe giving you some ideas of what you could do to make your own either shell or inclusion dice. And until next time, go make something really cool.